Hello, everybody. Welcome to Best Whole New World. This is so exciting. This is our first live threesome. And this is so appropriate because this is the Rising to Love series with Melody Chadamoyo. And today we have added the male element to the equation with Richard Ambrosio from New York City or just New York State?
New York State.
New York State. That counts. And so we're talking about, as I said, what men get from intimacy. So I'm so anxious to hear this conversation, and I am going to ask questions as we go along. So Melody, do you want to start off?
Yeah, we are going forward from last week where we were talking about intimacy in general, talking about how important it is and how people connect with each other. And now we want to get to go deeper and see if men get anything out of intimacy. Because we tend to generalize anything more than the physical that they get already. We tend to generalize that men just think about sex and it doesn't really mean anything to them. It's just a physical expression and all that. And I hope Richard is going to agree with me on this one, but you're free to say, no, you're wrong, Melody. That's not true. And yeah, so today there are three of us, and I'm so grateful that Richard could join us. And thank you, technology, for allowing New York, Canada, and Ireland to be together. So yay!
So Richard.
Yes.
Do you get anything out of intimacy?
Well, I've always defined intimacy first from the emotional aspect. Mm-hmm. So I actually once had a conversation with a woman, my ex-wife, and I used the word intimacy, but not in any context. And she jumped into that it was sexual intimacy. And I kind of got startled by her. And I said, no, intimacy means getting so connected with somebody that there's an emotional, spiritual, intellectual connection. And from that can come the sexual connection. Right. So I was actually kind of astonished that a female used that word strictly from a sexual standpoint. So that's my definition of what intimacy is. And it starts with two people who've made a choice to be vulnerable, to be candid, to be non-judgmental, because you can't expect the other person to be intimate with you if they feel like something they're going to say is going to be treated harshly.
Right.
And I think men may try to put up a front about vulnerability and being candid and open, more so out of wondering, is this going to put me in a bad situation? Is she going to think I'm weak? Is she going to think I'm feminine versus masculine?
Right.
And I think a lot of men that I know struggle with intimacy more because they're not sure that they can truly trust the woman they're with these parts of themselves that they don't know are going to be respected as masculine. So the answer to your question is, for my point, because I don't know necessarily for other men, is that yes, when you have a true intimacy with your partner, your female partner, not every woman that comes into your life, most men, I would think, would get something out of that because they have a trusting, loving relationship if they go in that direction.
Okay, so I would tend to agree with you, like in the fact that I would have been totally shocked if somebody had just equated sex and intimacy together, like this idea that they would be completely separate and apart, almost on opposite ends of the spectrum, as far as I'm concerned. You did just raise an interesting question for me. So Melody, is when you said, I think most men, maybe like when they're with their partner. So immediately for me, it's like, the old, I'm married to you and I'm intimate with you. I just have a few other things going on the side. Okay, so can men have that aspect too? Can they be intimate with one person? Is this something we need to understand, but they're actually having sex with somebody else?
You're asking Melody or me?
I'm asking you, Richard.
Well, if a man is having sex with somebody else and he has an intimate, candid, vulnerable relationship with his significant other, then I'm not sure how intimate he's really being with the significant other, because wouldn't he be telling that person sex isn't satisfying, or I'm looking for something else, or I'm not happy in this relationship? Then where's the intimacy if you're hiding something as significant as a sexual affair with somebody else?
Brilliant answer. Every woman out there, if you listen to what Richard just said, that was like the icing on the cake. Okay? Yeah. Like if you want, Richard, you're still single? Just drop your names in the comment section below. Okay. But what Richard's saying is, right? How intimate can you be if the person is unable to be honest and truthful with you about what's going on, to be completely vulnerable and surrender your soul?
I'm just going to add, I don't think it's possible to be completely as open and vulnerable as we are talking about here and be able to go and sleep with someone else. I mean, really, it's like a conflict of your soul. You know what I mean? Because then you are not just compromising your relationship with that person. You are compromising yourself and your integrity and your sense of respect.
Right.
So if a man is doing that, he's actually saying, I don't respect myself and I don't respect you.
Yeah. Okay, Melody, I'm going to call you on this one.
Call me.
I'm calling you because you've been honest with people in your own relationship, right? You and your husband had that moment. And so in that moment, how would you define that time and that experience with what we're talking about now, about intimacy?
I would define it as that was the time when we were very far apart emotionally. We were not together at all, emotionally, physically, or spiritually. And that's the reason why we got to that space. And now, the more I get deeper into this subject, the more it's very clear, because even when I look at our financial situation, it got really desperate or bad during that time because we were not together. And once we got, I think the reason why I knew instantly that he had done what, he had slept with somebody else was because I could still, despite the fact that we were not really connected, I could still read him like a book. So when I saw him, like I literally looked at him and I knew. And I said, what happened? What did he do? And he couldn't hide it from me either. It's not like he said, oh no, whatever. He just said, he told me instantly, yeah, I did. I slept with our friends. And that was devastating. But to a great extent, I could also kind of, not really justify it, but I could understand, because I think he was looking for that inner connection we had before that we didn't have. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, because I think that's a key thing. Is intimacy is an ongoing, everyday situation. It's not like you get into a partnership or a marriage and then you're just intimate from then on in, right? So you were intimate and you started to fall away from that intimacy and separate, and hence you then fought your way back and reawakened and became even more intimate.
And I also started to honor myself, because I think that was the 2 years into my marriage. I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. and I was the servant. I did the whole woman is supposed to do and master every little thing that happens in the home and go out to work and be an excellent mom. And I wasn't taking care of me. I took care of him. I made sure he had beautiful clothes and everything, but I wasn't taking care of me. And I remember my sister Nelsa, thank you, Nelsa, she came to Ireland during that time, and she opened our wardrobe and she said, how is it possible that Saura has got more clothes than you? You are this woman. What's wrong with this picture? And until then, I had not seen that when I walked into a shop, I went to the men's side and the children's side, and I totally forgot about Melody.
That's great.
So, yeah.
Richard, I'm not sure if you could see the comment or not that popped up, but Nelta wanted to make sure that she's there, that she was welcoming you and saying it was great to have you a part of this whole experience. So could you see the comment?
I did, yes.
Okay, cool. Okay, so Richard, what do you think as women? No, not that you can think as women. Let's reflect.
No, I don't think I can.
What would you like us women to know that you think we have no idea, or we think we know it, but we're all wrong? What would you like to share with us?
You think you know it, but you're all wrong. I don't know, because I think every relationship is so different. I have had, friendships with women who are in stable relationships, and because I'm more open, they've talked to me about their relationships. There was no interest between anybody.
Right.
And I think that made them feel comfortable, that they came to me and said, look, I'm having a problem with so-and-so, and I wanted to ask you some questions.
Right.
And I think when I've heard women do that, I think what I've heard, and it's not always been consistent, but it's been a common theme, is that women don't realize how deeply a man's emotions might be running, that he's thinking deeply about certain issues, and maybe the woman's only picking up on the surface because he's not expressive about it and he can't get down to the details. And so, they kind of assume that the water doesn't run deep. That's one theme that I think I've seen.
Mm-hmm. That's good. I can see that, and I can experience, say, from my own self, is I would ask maybe a question, and Melody has shared with me that a lot of men take a while to process. And so as I'm asking, let's say, a question, and there's nothing coming back, I'm immediately then bombarding with the next statement of the question because I've decided what the answer must be because they've taken so long to answer the question. So suffice it to say, in the past, that just, didn't work. So
I wanted to ask Richard about, because I've been reading about this, that different kinds of sexual experiences provide different things. Is that true? Hi, Christine. Thanks for joining us.
What do you mean? What do you mean, Melody? What kind of different experiences? You mean like a shallow physical relationship versus a meaningful physical relationship? What do you?
Oh, you don't have any shallow relationships, do you, Richard?
Start with that.
Well, I hate to admit it, but I think the most shallow physical relationship I had was with my ex. I think as we grew apart and we kind of felt like there had to be this element of us that we continued to do, and it was awful. Right. It was absolutely awful because, there was no emotional gratification and there was no connection. And that was pretty lonely. That's a pretty lonely experience for a person to be in bed with somebody and feel like you're all alone.
Yeah.
Despite the fact that you're going through this physical relationship.
Yeah.
Versus the most recent relationship I've had where there's, a deep spiritual connection and a deep, commitment to each other, that we're trying to help each other in our professional lives. We're trying to help the person get through personal issues, and you're forming this bond. And then you deepen it with, the ultimate thing that you can do is give your body to just one person. And now all of a sudden, you've truly, quote unquote, consummated the whole thing. So there's huge differences, and I don't know. The one thing I'm learning, because I was married for like 20 some odd years, and I've only been dating for like the last 5 or 6, is that women talk a lot more about their sexual lives to their girlfriends than men talk about their sexual lives with their male friends. Men I don't think, talk as much as you guys do. And I don't know why, because you would have thought that we're the ones who need to brag about everything or whatever. But you guys seem to talk more. At least that's what females tell me.
So you mean all that stuff, that idea that you get together in the locker room and you're saying, hey, man, yeah, I went out with her, or I had
in your teenage years. Maybe in your 20s, when you're trying to impress guys that you're getting it more than they are. Maybe then, but that's just shallow stuff. It's not, I've heard from girlfriends that I've dated how 3 or 4 girls will get together and they'll talk about stuff I would never have talked about with my male friends. And you sit there and go, really? You guys talk about that?
So what you're saying, okay, for this might be, for some people's ears, they might have to close them. Okay. Okay. So what we're talking about here is like some of the women will get together and then we'll get into nitty gritties and they go, oh yeah. And so when he went down on you or whatever, and like, but so you guys, what you're saying, you're not talking about intimacy like that. When you're intimate with somebody, it's a very much you and her experience, right? You're not turning around to your best buddy and going, oh yeah, you know what? When this happened and she went down on me, like it just is not. Okay.
Nope. And I've never been in an environment where men might have felt comfortable chit-chatting like that, and they did. I've never seen men, 2 or 3 guys going, oh yeah, she does that for you? Oh yeah. I've never heard that. I'm 53 and I've never heard that. Maybe when I was 18, I heard that. But not since I became an adult.
Okay. I just had to clear, like there's some things that to me that us women think about men, right? And Richard's here to clear it all up because that's
I'm only speaking from my personal experience. I don't want to.
Oh, it's okay. Dr. Oz has his own TV show and he speaks as if he's the doctor's, right? So, Richard, we know that you're just speaking from your perspective, but it's great that you happen to be representative of the whole male population.
Oh, goodness. So, is it actually true that when you are serious with a girl, when you get, when you think, yeah, she's important to me, you don't want to be telling your friends about her? Like, like your sexual encounters. When she's important enough, it's the whole, we can talk about this or tell your guys how amazing she is or whatever. You don't do that? In bed.
I have never heard a man in a committed relationship brag about his significant other in bed or talk about what they do in bed. I've never, as an adult, ever heard a man do that. I have heard some sort of single men, meaning they might have even been in a relationship, but it wasn't a relationship. They were cheating because the marriage was over or whatever. And yes, I've heard men say some very surface level things. Oh my God, she's incredible, but never beyond a couple of adjectives.
Right. She's incredible. Whew, no.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I have heard that before.
I want to say a friend of mine once asked me, also, what do you do? And I felt that that experience between the two of us was too important, was too sacred for me to ever describe it to anybody. I've never told anybody, not even Nelda, who is my closest friend in the whole world. I've never told her to that extent. Yeah, he's amazing, yes, but that's all. That's all that ever happened. I felt, and my friend came and I felt that was an invasion of my privacy and my intimate enclosure with him. And I would never talk about that. I know women do. I've heard them talk about it, but I kind of feel like if it's sacred, if it's that important, you don't want to share it with everybody. You share it with your partner. We used to talk about our sex life all the time with my husband. But we didn't go beyond that.
Well, so that brings up a question for me. So, Richard, what does it feel like, or what could you imagine that a guy would feel like, knowing that you're in this intimate relationship, so you're feeling vulnerable enough to share your soul, right? And that you then found out that maybe she's sitting around talking about your life in intimate details with her girlfriends.
Well, if she's if she's talking about my life in some sort of context, I went through a very ugly divorce for about 4 years, and I was dating somebody for about 2.5 of those 4 years.
Okay.
And that person, unfortunately, got enmeshed in the divorce because I'd be having a bad day. And she would ask me, what's wrong? I can tell there's something wrong. And I'd say, well, the other party did this, or something happened with the kids. And I know that a couple of her very, very best friends knew some of those details. But I imagine that's because she'd be out for drinks with her girlfriends and they'd say, what's bothering you? And she'd say, oh, I was on the phone with Rich and so did this. So that doesn't bother me. That kind of sharing shows me that this person is listening, and I trust her to, share details that might feel confidential, but knowing that she's doing it in a factual way and to something of a loving way, because she just wants to get through this with me.
Get it out.
So that's what I felt during those times. I've also dated a woman who shares a lot more just because she's a lot more, the filter isn't there to kind of say, I shouldn't talk about that. And that's a little bit unnerving for me, is to know that, so this might get shared with someone outside of our relationship, really? That's a little unnerving.
So say more about that one, because since I have it, here I am talking to both of you. So I probably need some coaching on this one. Going forward, how unnerving is it?
Well, what it does is it then puts you in every moment wondering, am what I about to say going to potentially be shared with somebody else 2 days from now, a week from now? Is something we're going to do in bed going to be shared tomorrow?
Right.
and so what it does is it starts to take you out of the moment, because now you realize, like Melody said earlier, is that it's not contained in this relationship anymore. It could potentially be open to others.
Yeah.
Now,
and unnerving.
So the unnerving part then is allowing you to focus on the future of the unknown versus being present, because you're uncertain. There isn't that element of, in a sense, there's a trust level, right? You can't just trust that your moment is just your moment because you're concerned about your future.
Right.
Okay.
And it takes away the vulnerability of it, doesn't it? It makes you it makes you withhold part of yourself because you're afraid that people are going to discover things about you that you don't want other people to discover. That's the reason why we have bedrooms that have locks on them, because you don't want to. Oh, what happened to Jacqueline? You don't want to be sharing that part with other people.
Right.
You want that part of yourself to be with this one person.
Right.
Now they're saying, I think if you find yourself sharing a lot, it's you're having sex with. It's not being intimate with. I'm not sure what she's trying to say.
Maybe I think I know what Melta's saying.
Okay. Yeah, sometimes I don't.
I was trying to see if I could somehow invite Nelda up so she could just say it, but no, I couldn't figure. That was what I was. But no, so.
Okay, all right.
So go ahead, Richard. What was she trying to say?
Well, I think she's repeating what we've been saying, is that it's not violating, because it depends on the person whether they feel violated. But I think she's repeating what Melody just said, that then you're really not being intimate with that person.
Yeah.
I would say probably you need some. I'm going to speak for my situation, since I'm pretty open about life and I go with the flow, is that probably little parameters, need to be set in motion. Like what happens in between the two of us in the bedroom, in the context, and anywhere in the house, stays there. Something to that respect, so that I go, yeah, and that's just my new, it's just like there are things that go on with destiny and faith that I wouldn't share, right? So it's just knowing what the boundaries are.
Right.
Yeah.
So everybody's safe.
Mm-hmm.
Or that there's an understanding. I mean, if a person, I've found that some people can never feel safe. That's what's inside their own head.
Yeah.
But if everybody's clear about what their parameters are, then at the very least, someone knows this is what can and cannot be done.
Right. Yeah, that's a very valid point, because you can do whatever you want on the outside, and the other person still might not feel safe, just because they haven't gotten over that. And I've been there before too. So
yep.
Right, you do your best. So Melody.
Yeah, go ahead.
Has Richard shed any light on anything, or just confirmed everything that you are teaching all of us?
Oh yeah, he's on point. He's totally right. But I was going to ask him another question that might need some people to close their ears. But the question I wanted to ask is, how important is sex to men?
How important?
On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being like you can't get through a day without sex, like I can't get through, in the past I couldn't get through a day without a rationalization. And 1 being it's just, not important at all. Where is it?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, 7 and 8, it depends. Because it ebbs and flows. I mean, when you're in the middle of a marriage with children, you can get very distracted all week long. You can get tired from earning a living. You can get tired from the stress of worrying, am I saving enough for college, for the kids? You can. And as a result, it starts to suppress the libido. But I think that, it's certainly, for most men, it's certainly stronger than a 6. For some men, it's a 10. It's like, it's everything for them. They don't want to make an emotional connection. They're very much into the power, the conquest. It's not just about the actual orgasm and the physical nature of it. It's about, I don't know, like the scorecard of life, that I'm a man and I've got a scorecard and I want to be the guy who's got the most hits.
Right.
I want to have the highest batting average. But here's what I'll tell you.
That's only 333.
Well, that's a really good batting average. Hopefully for happily married or happily engaged couples, it's a little bit more than that. But what I would then say is, look, if you're in a intimate relationship and that woman makes your heart sore and she calls you at lunchtime to find out if you broke from work and how's your day going, and she's really interested in what your work is, and she remembers things about your day. Hey, you had that meeting this morning. How did it go? What I think for a lot of guys, when they start feeling that connection, then sex goes up because they want the whole thing. When they come home, their ego is big because they knew she was caring about him during the day, and you put the kids to bed, and now you're looking at her and going, you are fantastic. You made me feel good about myself. You make me feel like a man. And now it could be a 9 or a 10 because the two of you are connected.
Right.
So it makes you, yeah. So it gets you to be connected with you being a man. Like there's
absolutely.
It's validated.
Absolutely.
And what I heard there that want to make sure that the other women heard there is that if you're connecting with your significant partner, whatever name we want to give them, the man in your life, there you go, the man in your life, and you're talking him to him in the day, acknowledging him, it is like foreplay. We always talk about women liking foreplay, but what I just heard you say is that she's been arousing you all day long.
Yes.
Right? And stroking your ego, and now you want your other body parts stroked.
Yeah.
What does it do to you if you are married to a woman and you approach her for sex and she continuously says no?
Well, I think there's probably 2 or 3 different typical male responses. The first one probably is going to be, just a sense of rejection. What the heck is that all about? I mean, what did I do wrong? Is she angry at me? So, you've got to deal with the rejection. I would hope that a man who's in a significant relationship another reaction might be, honey, is there something going on? What's going on? It's like 3 weeks now and you keep rejecting me. And he would want to take it as a signal for a discussion. Mm-hmm. And then I think the third response would be, I'm out of here. I'm done with this. I can't get through to this person. And I think that's potentially when a guy starts looking elsewhere. He's not going to work on it. He's not going to be introspective. He's not going to look at the relationship. And the easiest solution is to go find someone else.
But it's like a personal upfront, isn't it? It's like it's worse than, what do I want to say? It's a deeper personal rejection than just like women take saying no to men really lightly. This is the reason why I'm pushing this. They take it like action, it's all about me and all this. Whereas you have said that you start thinking about, what did I do wrong? What's wrong here? Or you're going into yourself trying to figure out, am I being punished for something? Because you being rejected is like a punishment, right?
It could be. I mean, I was married to somebody who was clinically depressed. Mm-hmm. So I didn't always take it as a rejection of me. I figured that person was going through one of those deep lows, that the medicine wasn't working and she was just in a bad place. So I didn't always take it as that. Before I knew she had a depression, I took it that way. I took it as I'm not interested in you. You don't turn me on. But once I started to understand, and I found out by accident that she was clinically depressed. She had a nervous breakdown one night, and we took her to the emergency room at her insistence. And when the doctor came into the room, he said, "What's wrong?" And she explained it, and he said, "Well, tell me about the medicines you're on." And when she mentioned an antidepressant, I was like, wow, I didn't know that. So, it was an eye-opener for me. And from then on, I looked at myself less as the cause of the lack of physical intimacy. And in fact, I realized that was also the cause of the lack of intellectual intimacy, emotional intimacy, spiritual intimacy. It all came together. Oh, this person's having a serious issue right now. So it depends. And if a man is in a relationship with a woman, if he's having a shallow relationship, he might feel rejected because he's not introspective. He's not engaged enough with that person to think anything other than, I'm a stud, I take care of her, and she doesn't want it. Versus a man who's like, well, this morning she told me that she had that really important meeting, and I know that she was late picking the kids up from daycare, and she was really stressed out about it. Maybe that's the reason why she's not in the mood. So it depends. It's so contextual. To me, the key is self-awareness. The key is that both parties need to do the work on themselves first to understand what motivates them in life. How does the other person fit in that motivation? Am I motivated to be a great mom, or am I motivated to raise great kids? And the guy sleeping next to me, he's just as motivated as I am, and that's why I treasure him so much. When you do that kind of work on yourselves and you know who you are, and you start to open up and have that discussion with the person sleeping next to you, everything's possible. And like Jackie said earlier, then you're having foreplay all day long. You come home at night and the other person is cooking dinner, and that can be just as good as, that can get you going. Oh my God, she's making me dinner. You almost start envisioning her with no clothes on. You're like,
okay, hold on, it's getting hot over here. No.
But seriously, that's how it works.
Yeah. So what about the texting thing, Richard?
What about the texting thing?
What about the text? Okay, so there's the dialogue. If I'm calling you, okay, so how personal I've gotten now, Richard and I. Okay, so I'm calling you, Richard, and saying, how's your day going? And you had the meeting was great. Is it the same if I'm texting you as talking to you? And that may be just your experience now, but what is it feeling? Younger guys are different than I'm not sure, but I'm going to say we're a little older, that we didn't grow up with texting.
I'm 53. I don't mind admitting it.
Okay, so I'm so much older than you.
Just a baby.
So is texting the same if I'm texting you going, how's your day today? How did the meeting go? Is that still feel like I care? Is that?
Yes. Okay. It absolutely does, because, you may be texting me because you don't know if so many people work in cubicles now. They're not even in offices where they can close a door. I travel a lot. I might be at the airport. I might be in a cab somewhere. I don't have privacy. And I think the women that I date understand that I may be in a fluid situation, and they'll text me. What I like, especially, is if a woman will text me at an hour when they think I might be free. Because I work from home, so I don't have a commute in the morning. So, once my 18-year-old lives with me, my 21-year-old is about to move back in after college.
Was that
I saw that
too. Italian. Okay, yeah. Okay, no.
And I have a 14-year-old who lives back and forth between the two homes. And once the kids are gone at 10 after 7, I'm kind of free till 9 o'clock. So if my significant other sends me a text message, hey, are you free right now? That to me is wonderful because she's asking permission. Do you have time for me? I'd really love to talk to you. And if I have to reply back and say, no, sweetie, I'm actually sitting at Newark Airport, right. We can go back and forth. That's okay. It's, again, it really all comes back to two people being open and candid and honest, setting the parameters, like you said, and saying, this is what my life is like. What's your life like? I mean, I've dated somebody who used to have a 20-minute commute from home to work.
Right.
And in the morning, she was free. But in the afternoon, she was driving another person. Right. And I'd be like, I don't want to have a conversation with you while somebody's sitting next to you in the passenger seat. You're driving that person home. Be present to them. And this person couldn't understand that.
Okay.
And no matter how many times I said, I don't, that person is present in your space. Give them the 20 minutes and call me tonight after you put your son to bed or whatever. Mm-hmm. Find time for me and I'll find time for you. And as long as you have those parameters, it doesn't matter if it's texting or a phone call or an email. The two people need to figure that out and just communicate. Honey, is this okay?
Right.
Do you need more?
Yeah. And just to add to what Richard was been saying, you just reminded me of the emails that myself and my husband used to send to each other. And there would be like one-liners or two-liners. Hi, how is the day? And sometimes he wouldn't reply for hours. So after lunch, I would say, so you're not talking to me today? And then he would immediately reply, I'm so sorry, honey, I was so busy and I had this project. And I say, actually, I know. And then it's not like I was, giving out to him or anything. I was just trying to say, yeah, I got in touch with you and you didn't say anything. Is everything okay? And then there would be days when he would leave. I would leave him at work, drove him to work, left him. By the time I get to the library, I've already an email saying, I miss you already. I was like, I just left you at work. But I also understood that because that's how I would be feeling. I was like, oh, that's so sweet. And you have a day like that. How was the lunch? Oh, my lunch was terrible. Or, oh, it's such a great lunch. We went for a walk, whatever, And then you keep the conversation going. And it's not like I'm trying to spy on you. And I'm not saying drop everything and talk to me. And I'm not saying reply now. Because some people think the moment I send a message, instant reply. But the person is at work. They can't just reply instantly. Sometimes they have things actually that are more important than that, and sometimes people need to focus.
Did you give him
consideration? Yeah.
Would you give him that positive feedback? Would you say to him, do you know how much that email meant to me this morning, so that he got the reinforcement?
Oh yeah, always. Always, yeah.
Men want that reinforcement. We want that. This works for me. Do this.
Yeah, yes. Thank you for saying that.
See, I've always had such more male traits in me and stuff like that. I've always wanted to get that extra high five. Like, yes, I did.
I've noticed, actually. I've noticed.
But I just wanted to, there is that book, The 5 Languages of Love. And, so I think a lot of women like to put men in the same basket and say men and sex, men and physical intimacy. That's the only way they feel loved, right? But that's not it, is it, Richard?
No.
It's not true. Not by a long shot.
And he has also mentioned sorry, Richard, to cut you off, this emotional aspect of sex or intimacy, and the spiritual aspect of intimacy, which we were talking about last week. Those things are also important for men and for women.
Yes. I have dated a woman who work was extremely important to her. It validated her sense of her intelligence. And when she was being mistreated at work, she felt invalidated. So being engaged intellectually with what was going on with her boss, her job search, projects she was working on, she said, I really appreciate the fact that you're paying attention to all of that. And I know I'm the same way. I mean, if I'm working on an important project and the woman I'm dating, I've told her about it 3 or 4 times and she still will say to me, well, what's that all about? And I'll say, well, we kind of talked about it the other day and then last week and 3 weeks ago. And then you start to feel like, okay, well, that part of me, which is 5 days, sometimes 7 days a week, when you're a consultant, you're working 7 days a week. That's a big part of me, unfortunately, to work. And I'd like to be validated the way I'd be validated in bed as a man who, takes care of you physically. I want to be validated in all the aspects.
So you want to be heard, right? So being heard with what's going on. I think there's plenty of women out there that feel like we're the ones that you're not hearing us. That's a common one. They never know what's going on in my life. And I do think sometimes we just babble a little bit too much, and so there is that sense of they're just being there, because they've lost the point. And I know I can say sometimes I've met guys like that, is that I feel like, okay, now you've given me this whole scenario, and that wasn't even like you really wanted to talk to me. Like I just feel like sometimes they just want to get it out. So you're also saying if you're in that space, you want to know that the person's actually there allowing you the space to get it out, whether they got every detail, that they just were there with you.
Right.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Wow, this has been like so great, all these conversations here. I think this one could go on and on and on and on. We might have to do like part 2. But so Melody, where are you at in terms of, have we accomplished the threesome that you wanted us, that we're only going to keep between the 2 of us, the 3 of us?
I think we have. I think we have covered subjects in more detail than the 2 of us could ever get into, because Richard was giving us validation and also other insights that we were not even aware of that are going on. And I think we can just keep growing, because next week we'll be talking about what women get from intimacy. We also want to clarify that not only men, because I think when we start talking about intimacy, women tend to think they are being of service. Like, they are not getting anything out of it. They're just doing it for men. I've heard it so many times that I decided we need to talk about this and talk about the physical concept, what we are benefiting emotionally, spiritually, and physically as well. And so, next week, that's what we are talking about. If you have never thought about it, you might just make sure you're here. And if Richard can grace us with his presence, that would be great too, because then he can ask us questions that other men might want to know.
I've got to take my son for a sports physical at 2:15 New York time next week. So I'm booked next Thursday afternoon.
That's okay. We're talking about the women aspect. Okay.
No, I want to hear it. I want to.
If you can get online, send questions on Facebook, and we'll do our best to answer them.
Yeah, is your son okay?
Yeah, it's his sports physical. He plays baseball, so he's got to go for his physical before he can practice.
Oh, that's why you said a 333 is like an excellent batting average. Yeah, okay, because it is a little over the top. But I wanted to make the point that 333, it was like, way lower than a 7 out of 10.
Well, if you're batting 700 in baseball, you're awesome. You're going to the major leagues.
Well, you've already more than doubled the best batting average in the major leagues.
Yes.
Right. So this has been lots of fun. I am so glad that the 2 of you could be here, and I look forward to more of Rising to love. So same time, Melody and I'll be back here. And who knows? Things happen. Richard makes join us. Leave your comments below. Leave your questions if you want to know more about this topic of conversation. You want to hear more. You got questions for, Melody. You can always PM her. And just have a fabulous week, everybody. Thank you so much for being here.
Bye.